Hi everybody, welcome. What this is, what's going on here, is radically unlike what the normal consensus reality, human conception of it is. Radically and profoundly different and other than what the most advanced human thinkers think it is. Imagine you're in a dream. Last night you're lying in bed dreaming, sound asleep and you're dreaming. Now imagine you want to try and figure out what a dream is by following the plot line of what's going on in the dream. So there you are and you're riding along on a horse or something and there's people around you and maybe someone comes down on a magic carpet or, whatever, just dream circumstances. And you're looking at all these things and you're saying, well, here I am in the world where all this stuff's happening. What's going on here? You'd be looking at entirely the wrong conditions to get accurate information, because what's going on actually has absolutely nothing to do with what seems to be going on, except in the most profound way. If you have the wit to look at the way the dream is coming into existence in your consciousness, if you have the wit to look at the way presentation is occurring substantially rather than following the plot line along. And typically, as human beings, we don't do this, do we? It's like, well, here I am, and I'm in this body, and I'm in this my life, and I have my circumstances, and there's success and failure. And typically, we approach spirituality. I should say, perhaps the majority of people approach spirituality as trying to get some sort of an augmentation, trying to get some foot up, trying to get some value added on top of that. So here I am as a human being, and let me just sort of get a little polish on top, get a little extra. That extra 10 or 20% that's like icing on the cake. And in actual fact, true spirituality consists of discovering that what you actually are and what you think you are and what you think this is completely and entirely other than what you have ever thought, what you have always thought it to be. Which may be one of the reasons why true spirituality is so rarely engaged in by people. Most people much prefer the sort of polite dabbling in spirituality where you go to hear a speaker and you talk about how well they put it, and then you go to see another speaker and you get a few books and you read them and you change your wardrobe and maybe you get an Indian name or something if you're really walking on the wild side. But to really take the plunge and really radically inquire, what is this? What is this? What is going on here? What is happening? And most people don't go there because it's unsettling, to say the least. You leave the herd, you leave the tribe, you leave the comfort zone of people huddling together, reinforcing their own sort of mutual support system of, we're all in it together, and we're all living our lives, and we're all fighting the good fight, and we're all eating organic, and we're saving the whales, and great, by all means, all of this stuff is fabulous, by all means do it, but it has absolutely nothing to do with what this is, any more than the color of the horse you're riding on in the dream has to do with the fact that it's a dream. The interesting thing about experience is what it is, not what seems to be happening. And to look at what it is, you have to somehow bypass or let go of or somehow remove yourself from the context of what's happening. Because we're so conditioned to approach our experience in terms of the narrative, in terms of the interpretation, in terms of, what's going on in this situation. Am I doing okay? Are there any problems? Where's the sparkle in the situation? Blah blah blah. But what is the common denominator? What is experience itself? what is this astounding light show that shows up when you wake up every morning. You know, it looks different. Every instant it looks different. It never looks the same way twice. You've never seen these exact context of configuration of experiences before, and you never will again. Every instant's absolutely unique. But so you can't get necessarily much of a hint from what it looks like, although this fact that it's absolutely inconstant is really interesting. And if you look very closely at an instant, even though it's gone by the time you look at it, you notice the astounding richness of information. So much vaster and deeper and more luscious than we can possibly conceptualize. You know, and of course we're conceptual chauvinists. We're the king of it as human beings. I mean, we're just, we're really sharp. We can, I can come up with 1,000 names for everything I'm seeing and all the colors they are and the shapes they are and descriptions and narratives about them and all sorts of sophisticated arguments and all this stuff. And that is so tiny a scratching the surface of the data density that is present in an instant of experience. You look at someone's face, just a snapshot of someone's face in an instant, and how many colors are you seeing? How many textures are you seeing? You can't quantify it. It's infinite. It's literally infinite. So this is a very interesting quality of experience right away, the astounding richness of it. And it's always that way, isn't it? I mean, it's never not rich. Even when you close your eyes or you're going to sleep at night, it may get sort of relatively undefined in terms of the precision that we're used to relating to our waking experience with, but it's not like it gets less, does it? There's this velvety thickness and richness and textural qualities, and it's subtle, but it's always just astoundingly full, transcendentally full, a fullness that could not possibly be captured in analysis. A fullness that you could write an encyclopedia a day for the rest of your life and you wouldn't capture the fullness that's present in an instant of your experience. So, and this is accessible, it's completely obvious, if we have the wit to notice it. And that's really interesting. And the fact that all of reality is in your experience. It's very interesting. There's nothing whatsoever that's not in your experience. So where's your experience? What's it sitting on? What's it floating in? Where's it coming from? How is it showing up? Where is it shining forth from? How is it experiencing itself? We can be with these issues very nakedly and very presently, but you can't be with them presently and nakedly from a conceptual point of view. You can't be with them presently and nakedly from the point of view of your usual narrative of who you are and what you're doing in your life and all that sort of stuff, because that turns out to be very trivial and very, very partial as a description in terms of really addressing what is actually present here. So noticing the fullness of our experience, noticing the richness of our experience, noticing the inherently transcendental nature of experience in the sense of the impossibility of capturing it as any sort of a simple phenomena. It's very subtle, it's very interesting, it's very slippery. Yet it's sublimely actual. It's sublimely and absolutely present and intelligent. The patterning of experience, every photon perfectly in its place, nothing stepping on anything's toes, gravity working flawlessly. The metabolism of the body just humming away. All these things just, effortlessly and inherently, just like a perfection of orderliness, a perfection of functionality. And it just comes with, in an instant, bang, it's doing itself right now, in real time. All of that functionality is happening just always right now, on this cutting edge of the moment. So just to notice that the entire world, the entire universe, exists solely in your experience in a way that is absolutely inconceivable, absolutely unanalyzable, absolutely indescribable, and yet absolutely actual and accessible because it's right here, right now. It's completely nakedly present, it's completely available, this astounding fact, this one fact, this fact of being is always right here, right now. Its epicenter is you, and the entire universe is its evidence, and it exists in you. And what's up with that? That's just the start. That's just the start of the investigation. Is okay. That's a given. So, what is that? How far can you go into that? How far can you let go into what this really is and what it really implies? And if you have the drive, the inherent motivation to go there, to really ask these profound questions, then that's where you have to go. That's where you have to look. Anyway, I'm sorry for my scattered ramblings. So we can discuss if you want, or we can just sit around. I recommend, as we talk, we won't be talking about words, we won't be talking about ideas, we'll always be talking about this present fact. And so I invite you and recommend that you keep revisiting this or stay with this astounding fact that is eternally occurring right here, right now. And then we can talk about it from various angles if you have a mind to. And we have a microphone if you wouldn't mind speaking into it. That way people online can hear what you have to say. And as always, of course, sitting quietly is a perfectly acceptable option.
What you said kind of got me wondering if there's anything outside what I can see right now. Like if there's any, like if this is the point of the seeing or observation, then how do I know, or how do we know, or whatever, if there's anything outside that door. It could be just empty space. It is empty space even if there's, stuff in it, but you know what I mean?
What can you know? How can you know? The idea that there's something outside that door is an idea which may exist in your mind. That's interesting.
don't think
idea
you
that
can
might
know.
not be is an idea that exists in your mind, and that's interesting. You know, but what's the fact? What's the fact? The fact is simply this presence, and you know, even more profoundly perhaps than that question is not just what's outside that door, but is there even a door? Is there a room? Is this a room? Or are you in a room? You know? There's certainly this experience, this astounding presence of, you know, a variety of, let's call them experiential textures, right? And we're used to thinking, oh yeah, this is a room, we're in a building, you know, we're in Berkeley, blah, blah, blah. But what there really is just this astounding melange of, you know, sort of dynamic experiential textures that are just wafting through, constantly transforming, never staying the same way for 2 instants. And, I mean, think of a dream. You know, in a dream you can seem to be in a building or in a car or standing on a sidewalk talking to somebody. You know, is there a car there? Is there a building there? Is there a sidewalk there? Is there another person there? There is the presence of textual experience, and there's also the presence of an interpretive faculty, interpretive facility that can spontaneously spit out, oh, you're a person, this is a rug, that's a floor, that's a camera, this is a microphone, blah, 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 which we do in a dream too. And in a dream we do it erroneously, right? We say this is a sidewalk, but you know, it isn't really. It's kind of not a sidewalk. It's a dream presence. And there's also this miraculous interpretive facility that is simultaneously present, doing this, calling it, turning it into a sidewalk for you. Is that not happening right here? Right? Is this right away? Do you experience these textures in your field of vision, field of sound, so on? And, oh, it's a room. Right? You have the spontaneous facility within your intelligence to do that. It just happens effortlessly. You can glance at something and you immediately know what everything is, to a large extent. But do you really? I mean, this facility is present in the context of all of this textual experience, right? But what's really present? You know, is there a room here? Is there a door here? Not only, the question is not only is there anything outside the door, is there anything inside the door? What's here? Is there a here? You know, we can easily see that there is because we're used to seeing that there is. This is our normal mode of interpretation. But this mode of interpretation exists in your consciousness. It doesn't exist in the room. You're telling it it's a room. Just like you tell, in your dream, you tell this field of light in your consciousness that in actuality it takes up no space whatsoever, because there's no space in your dream. You generate the space, and you call it space. You might call it space. It feels like space. You know, you generate a certain color of light. You say, oh, that's a sidewalk. Another pattern of light, oh, that's a person. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right, through this faculty of interpretive intelligence, right? How can you know that's not happening right now? Or more accurately, can you see that is happening right now? And can you discriminate the context that it's happening in? But it's fun to play with that, you know. It's not like you need these are questions and you need to get an answer, but it's a good jumping off point to look at, you know, what do I really know for sure?
Last weekend I had the good fortune to smoke something. It's called DMT, and I went into a complete fractal, humongous, including everything, experience. And I felt like, wow, I wonder if this is going on all the time too, you know? And then I realized, yeah, it's going on right now. have to say it's helping me now relate to what you're saying, because it's right there. You know, the fractal is right present as well. I just feel like it's just everything. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at what's really present experientially, the detail of it. I mean, the astounding detail of just of your field of vision, say. I mean, but of field of sound, field of touch, all of this is incredibly detailed, sizzling, alive, vibrant, dynamic, dancing energy fields that are present, floating around in your consciousness, right?
Yay!
Right? I mean, this is always just a case. This is an experience, and the miraculous ability to tame it, to turn that. Oh no, I'm in a room and I'm sitting on a bench and I'm talking to people, and we're having a spiritual discussion, and this is Berkeley and blah blah. We instantly bang.
Does anybody want the microphone?
Somebody. But we can examine these things because they're happening right here, right now. You can look at this. We can look at this. We can look at this patterning and the astounding power that your intelligence has to turn things into a very believable, solid interpretation that you don't even question. You look over and you say, oh yeah, these are people, these are chairs, this is a room, it's just bang, absolute certainty. Completely self-evident. That's an amazing power. And it's right here, so we can examine it, we can notice it. And we can notice that this power exists in a context which is a lot more questionable, which is a lot more trippy, which is a lot more open-ended of the actual experience that you're having all the time, the actual fields of experience, which are subtle, dynamic, moving, breathing, unstable, not really resolved as this or that, and infinitely information dense, so that if you actually assimilate everything that is present in your experience, you'll have a complete overload in terms of trying to incorporate it all as anything. But play with these things, because this is all we're talking about. What's right here, right now, what's actually present as your real-time experience. So you can play with it, you can explore this, you can, poke and prod it and see if you can see what's going on. Most spiritual inquiry fails because people are too tame. People are too gentle. People are not heavy-handed enough. People don't go the distance and really question everything. I mean, just go to the very root. Go to being, is there anything? Is there being? I mean, this is a really good question. And very, very, very quickly, of course, you transcend the conceptual, and you begin to be with your experience textually, be with your experience irrationally as this, we don't have words for it, of course, because it's not conceptual anymore, but just sort of this trippy flow, this strange dynamism that yet is so actual, so inherently transcendental, so intelligent, so weird, But we discover that we are that too, so we can meet it on those terms. When we begin to let go of needing to approach things conceptually, then we discover that there is an intelligence that is quite at home in this open-ended, non-linear, multidimensionality, infinite flows and things like that. They're its home turf. It's like, yeah, okay, I can be with that. Because you are that. You are not just a conscious mind. You are not just a conceptual mind. You are an astounding, vast intelligence system. And all this energy that shows up as your experience, as the expression of what you actually are, is inherently this intelligence. So it can meet itself irrationally. It can meet itself very directly. And this becomes quite apparent when we let go of needing to approach things conceptually, because it's not like all of a sudden everything goes, oh, I'm out of my depth, I can't handle it. I mean, maybe for some people. But, you know, you let go into this strange non-linearity, and you're still there. You know, you can't talk about it, you can't even think about it, but you're still there, you're still with it. And it's like learning to swim or learning to ski or something, where it becomes a textural experience that you participate in directly, through direct engagement, through being with it participatorily, non-linearly, textually, very much like skiing or swimming or playing music or something. It's a direct engagement. You know, I can define this inherent intelligence, this transcendental intelligence, as assimilative engagement. And you'll notice that you have this assimilative engagement inherently. You know, you come into a space you've never been before, and you look, and in the first glance, bang, you own it. I mean, you experience it all directly. So you don't, you know, you couldn't possibly describe it all. You can just sit down and look around and think and take inventory. But that's conceptually. But in terms of this direct assimilative engagement, as soon as you see, experience, bang, you're there, you've seen it. And that seeing, just the very fact of experiencing, is a profound intelligence. It's a profound integration of astounding quantities and qualities and ambiguities of quality, of experiential qualities, of energies, whatever.
Thank you for pointing this out.
My pleasure. It's fun, isn't it?
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. It's truly awesome. And it's real.
I met this, I don't even know how to describe it, this being in India. And he would I can't say he was doing things because it was just in this phenomenon, but, you know, things like leaving one body talking to people in a room and then another one serving chai for people next door. And I can see how I got so tripped up in how does he do that? How did he do that? It doesn't even matter the how or the he anymore. It's just like, what's happening? What's happening, you know? What's happening?
And the same thing's always happening, isn't it? It's just this inconceivable apparition. And then, what's doing it? How's it doing it? Are those questions even relevant?
But it's funny that to point it out, there had to be some kind of phenomenon like that my mind couldn't explain to wake me up to that all the time. Yeah. Because really, this is phenomenal.
This is most truly it. This right here is the high water mark. Whatever it looks like. You walk out of here tonight and you get in your car, high water mark. You go home and you go to bed, high water mark. Get up in the morning, drive in traffic, people are cutting you off and you flip them off and you're pissed off. High water mark. It's always on 10. It's always on 10. It's never not this present miracle.
It sounds as if you could actually find out where this is coming from. Or you just look. I mean, is that actually something that you can discover?
Yes, you can discover where this is coming from, but it turns out not to be a where, and it turns out not to be a coming from. But you can know that fact directly, intimately, and precisely.
Well,
in other words, you can know God. You can know reality. You can know yourself. You can know the Absolute. And all those, of course, are one and the same. Because it's right here. You just need to stop looking at it in terms of the contexts that you are used to thinking of it as being. Notice the open-endedness, notice the infinity, notice the spontaneity, notice the profound, inconceivable intelligence, notice the miraculousness. And seeing these qualities as they are will reveal to you what this is. It's not hidden. This is not hidden. But none of our usual modes of approaching it turn out to apply, even in the slightest. Like, where this comes from. There turns out to be no where in actuality, which is the answer to the where. The where is not a where. The comes is not a coming, and the from is not a from. And then even the this turns out not to be a this. So then where this comes from just goes poof. But what remains is this actuality, which turns out to not be encompassable in those terms accurately.
can just feel the conditioning of like, don't look too much, or then I guess it boils down to then you'll be locked up, but probably, you know.
Sure. Yeah. There's an enormous pressure to play the game. There's an enormous pressure to conform, to pretend to be someone.
Yeah.
We all know we're not anyone, and that's why we're all so insecure. We're all so busy trying to keep it together, project a good front to society, you know, pretend to fit in to whatever extent. It's not necessarily sad. It's interesting. It's fascinating that this astounding pressure to deny the fact that we don't know is so uniform in keeping everyone within its grip. You know, when you were a toddler, you knew you didn't know anything, right? And your mom comes along and says, "That's a fire truck." And then one day you say, "Oh, that's a fire truck." And your mom goes, "Yes, that's right, great, good, you know, a fire truck." You don't know what a fire truck is. You still don't know what a fire truck is, but you can point appropriately and say, "Oh, there was a fire truck." You know, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, you're playing the game."
There must be a fire.
Yeah, sure, all that, you know. But you know, everyone knows they don't really know what anything is. But we're all very skillful at pretending we do by being able to name it and come up with all these fancy narratives about things and discuss things very pseudo-intelligently and all that. But we all know we don't really know what anything is. And there's no shame in that. It's actually the fact. The sad thing is that we have so much invested in denying that. You know, as a matter of fact, not knowing is a great empowerment. Not knowing is liberating. Not knowing is an ease of letting go into fullness, because fullness is the unknown present, which is right here, right now. And as soon as you have to know what it is, you have to start churning out bullshit. You know, you have to start churning out lies. Oh, I know what everything. Oh, this is just a hillside club. You know, hillside club. You know, full of our self-importance and our certainty, and you know, being able to play the game, name things very convincingly, as if naming was knowing. You know, light. Oh, it's light. It's light shining. Light. Light is the coolest thing there is, and no one knows what it is. Nobody knows what it is. You could get the greatest physicists that ever lived in this room and ask them what's light, and they'll say to a person, "We don't know. We can tell you a lot about it, relatively in terms of measurements and stuff, but we don't know what it is." That's a good thing, because that unknowing is the actual present infinity, the actual present mystery, which is what you are. I mean, can you imagine the horror if you were actually the little person that society tells you are, and then you were going to die, and you have this little pathetic life, and you're stumbling through it with, you know, paltry successes and big failures, and the general sort of a faking it and mishmash, and you know, shades of gray, and then you get sick and you're in pain and you die. What a horror show. But then in this field of openness, in this field of the unknown, this field of light, you know, none of that means anything. It's just an assertion. It's just a narration. It's a fairy tale. You know, in light, where is failure? In light, where is success? It's just shining. Always shining. The light never stops. You close your eyes and there's light. You go to sleep and there's light. In your dreams there's light. You wake up, there's light. There's always light. Nothing but light.
I was wondering, about the difference between, there's this kind of everyday experience that we don't know what any of this around here is. I can see that, but then there's the kind of like totally much further out aspect of things like DMT and LSD and some of those kinds of things that seem so much beyond the everydayness that they seem really much more incomprehensible even than daily life. Could you comment on that?
Sure. Experience reveals a vast range of presentation, of degrees of incoherence, let's call it. LSD, DMT, deep meditation, all these kinds of things reveal that. Extreme sex, extreme activities, all this, is, wow, what's this? But when you go to sleep every night, same thing happens. You go to sleep and the world is disappearing, right? What's that about? What's that like? This is a very commonplace experience, When you're in deep sleep, what's that like? It's a very strange, interesting mode of experience that is very accessible. We all experience it all the time. It's just a matter of noticing the range of degrees of coherence that can show up in experience, and there's just literally an infinite range.
Degrees of coherence?
Sure, I'm arbitrarily calling it degrees of coherence. And even when it seems to be very, very coherent, like you're awake, you've had a cup of tea, you're focused, everything is very present and sharp, it's still absolutely incoherent. You look very precisely at exactly what you're seeing, and everything's just a little fuzzy, a little amorphous, a little indeterminate, which doesn't deny its specificity, right? It's always an astounding degree of specificity present in your experience. You're actually seeing all these colors and details, and I'm using the field of vision, but of course this applies to all our sense fields and thought field and various other experiential fields that may be present. All this stuff is actually showing up, and it can be showing up with an incredible degree of specificity, precision, presence. It's really there. I'm not saying it's all sort of fuzzy, nebulous shades of gray. But then if you look very closely at this specificity, it's all a little fuzzy. It's all a little amorphous. It all sort of blends from one thing into another. It itself sort of has a flow and a fluctuation where it's not really any one thing sharply, stably. There's a profound instability and dynamism in experience. I almost every time we talk, I recommend this one simple experiment. Sit in front of a blank wall, ideally say a white wall that's very well illuminated, for 5 or 10 minutes, and just sit still and look at it without moving. Within a couple of minutes, you'll say, "Where'd the wall go?" Because there's just all this astounding dynamism, and all of your experience is always exactly like that. And we're genius at denying that, at ignoring it, sort of skimming it over with a veneer of orderliness and stability that is supplied by the imagination. But the actual presence of experience is always like, just look at someone's face, and you say, well, I'm looking at their face and I'm not moving, and it's not moving. Bullshit, it's not moving. It's like, and you say, oh, that's my attention's wandering. Okay, cool, but what's attention? What's wandering mean? The fact is that experience is unstoppably dynamic, unstoppably slippery, unstoppably irresolvable with precision, even as it is very present and very specific. Right? I'm not talking about needing to fuzz it out and like, it's all getting dreamy. It's like, no, you can really be with it sharply. Just try to okay, I'm going to just sharpen up this experience and just be right with it really presently and precisely. And it's breathing. It's flowing, it's scintillating. It's inherent that experience is like that. You see, when it's very easy to see. You close your eyes and you're looking at this, right? You're looking at a sort of it looks like basically a dark field, and if you look, all of a sudden you notice, wow, there's these just uncountable billions of tiny, tiny, tiny little sort of flashes of light that sort of coalesce in various sort of cloud formations of gray subtly against a sort of darker background, and it all seems to sort of have shapes and flow together and stuff. But then you look really a little more closely, it's like, my God, this is really weird. You can't resolve it as anything. It's, it has this amazing dynamism and multidimensionality to it. And then you open your eyes and you look around and everything with your eyes open looks exactly the same. It's doing the same thing. It's the same subtle pointillism and dynamism. It's just always breathing. And it's, this is an artifact of, the neurons in my eyes are, perceiving the photons and they're firing, and then they, associates with the brain. Well, yeah, okay, that's great. But the fact remains that experience is intrinsically this on every level. Experience is intrinsically incoherent, intrinsically dynamic, intrinsically open-ended, intrinsically amorphous and dynamic. But intelligent, it's not stupid. It has this amazing internal associativeness with itself. It tends to form patterns. It tends to form constellations of meaningfulness. And experience on all levels does this unstoppably, And this is plain to see. If you just look at your experience, you'll discover this is quite clearly the case, I think.
Thank you. I guess I have some difficulty relating that, what you just described, or this, as with the other world that requires, the chopping of wood and drying water.
But it's not an other world, You need to go to the bathroom, you know where it is. But the bathroom is, if you look closely at it, is just this cloud of sparkling lights. And how do you know walking there? It's like, how do you know how to walk? Well, you just do, right? Yeah. You can't figure it out. It's miraculous. It's just this astounding inherent functionality that is there. It's like, look at that. I can stand up. I can move my hands. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm not falling over. How do I do that? I couldn't possibly tell you how I do that.
Right.
I don't know how I do it. It's miracle. And so this miraculous ability to cope with the world, to the degree that it is present, and it is one with what the world is. It is one with this astounding intelligent dynamism. It's not like there's this dynamism and then there's this other world where somehow you have to cope with that. The coping comes with, to the extent it does. I mean, some people don't cope. Some people can't find the bathroom. Some people are, out on the sidewalk, and that's cool too. That happens. Anything can happen. But it's all inherent. It's not like there's that and then something else that has to do something with that, because the doing happens within that, and the doing is done by that. Because it's not like you're over here watching this cloud of incoherence. You are it. It is you. You can't find a you outside of it.
I guess at times it's so dazzling and so beautiful that it's pretty much impossible for me to do anything else except just to be with it or whatever.
Cool.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Somehow it seems it demands to be comprehended or explained or something like that more, but I don't know how far that gets from in my life. Maybe from time to time, perhaps.
Sure. We play with this. We are in awe of it. We We are artistic with it. We are fascinated by it. We try to describe it. We read about it. All these various things to whatever extent, and it's wonderful. It's a way of being with this that you are. And you've never done anything else other than be with this that you are in all these different modes, and that's wonderful. That's what it does, is it explores itself. That's what life is this reality exploring itself as your experience. But you have functionality. Look, you're dressed very civilly. You've got yourself over here, You're not a basket case drooling in the corner, right, at the moment. You just hang on to it until someone demands it.
If anybody doesn't know where the bathroom is, ask.
Management would prefer you not use the floor. This is not some philosophical superstructure you need to hold or maintain or discover. Just simply look around at your own experience anytime you want and just see what it is. It will show you what it is. You don't need to tell it what it is. We've done that all our lives and it hasn't done us much good. And what it has to say is a lot more interesting than what we have to say in terms of telling it what it is. I mean, we tell it, oh, you're a building in Berkeley with a few people in it listening to a spiritual talk, and it's telling you, what it has to say is a whole lot more interesting. So you can pay attention to that. You can listen to that anytime you want without needing to hold any frame of reference or remember any buzzwords or have any formulas of what it is or how it is or, religious or philosophical. It's just simply this. Just this simple fact is sufficient. It shows you what it is if you let it. If you don't hold it as anything, let it be what it is, and it will show you. It will reveal itself to you. It will reveal its multidimensionality, and you won't be able. It will reveal that it is you. It will reveal that there's no you that you can find other than this present, field or whatever.
This is not... It's on, yes. This is not so carefully articulated. Something is happening now. I don't know what else to say about it. That may be completely not so, but it feels like there's experience occurring presently. Fair enough. I mean, let's call it a shoe or anything. And it seems like this has happened before. And I have a reasonable portfolio of memory that I would call experiences that happened in my experience in the past. Mm-hmm. And what is happening right now, whatever that might be or whatever we might call it, sure feels like it's been happening for the so-called chronological duration of, my whatever that is, having been born. Now, honestly speaking, I can't say with any certainty that this will or should continue a so-called moment from now. So what we call the future is, that truly feels like an ambiguity. Although I also have a lot of presumption, anticipation, predictability that whatever this is happening right now is likely to continue to happen. So even though I can't with any certainty say there's a future, I sure as shit have the certainty that there's a past. That if you take a rocket ship, whatever that is, and leave the atmosphere, you can photograph, or I've seen photographs, but I can't say that I wasn't on the ship when they were taken, mind you.
Photoshop, dude.
Yeah.
Watch out.
I mean, I've seen photos of the moon, but they tell me they didn't go there either. So there appear to be objects, not just the ones in what you'd call the room or the body that I can look at with my eyes or sensation. So there's an earth, there's a sun, you can see that without too much effort during what they call the day. So there's an incredible body of objects, phenomena, experience, relativities of a kind. I mean, if I look in this pocket, I'm going to have an experience of looking in this pocket. Now, is that experience stored in this pocket, just waiting to happen? Is experience stored somewhere? Is it on the shelf like a book or a DVD, a CD? Is it stored somewhere? I mean, the past feels like it's profoundly stored, to use that word, in my memory, my recollection. Even though, admittedly, that is fuzzy and vague and strange, and even memories of the same so-called event that I might have more than once, they're never quite the same memory. They don't conjure the necessarily same words or storytelling or emotivity or body language. When I'm recollecting something, even though I may have told that story 100 times, it's never the same story, either coming out of my mouth or felt by me as I'm relaying it. So what is this?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the question, and it is, one thing that it plainly reveals itself to be is arbitrarily, infinitely multidimensional, and it presents itself inherently in terms of all these various modes. None of which transcend experience, all of which are modes of experience. Memory is a mode of experience. It happens here now. Seeing the sun is a mode of experience. It happens here now. Seeing in someone's pocket is an experience. It happens here now. So is memory fundamentally different than seeing the sun, or fundamentally different than seeing in someone's pocket, or fundamentally different than having a discussion and thinking a train of thought? Or are all of these different demarcations just ways of admiring and waving our hands at the irresolvable multidimensionality of the way this can seem to be, without ever departing from itself? You want memory, it can seem like memory, while being this. You want the sun, it can seem like the sun while being this. You want individuality, it can seem like individuality while being this. You want space and time, you want the earth, it can seem like the earth while being this. And it never departs from this. What's the range of how this can appear? But are any of the degrees or aspects of this range actually discrete? Is that question even addressable? We can certainly see that none of the aspects of the range within which this can appear depart from this. They are all this intrinsically. They aren't augmentations of this or othernesses of this or parts of this that are discrete and need to be integrated somehow or need to be held, need to be juxtaposed. It intrinsically, effortlessly, and spontaneously presents as that. It presents as memory. It presents as space. It presents as dimensionality.
The homogeneity of what we're referring to as experience. So in all of its variability, in all of its permutation, we're suggesting that there's something not necessarily solid, but familiar that we can call this or consciousness or... Are we agreeing that there's reliability or continuity, similarity, familiarity of what appears to be happening from so-called click to click, moment to moment?
Yeah. Well, I can see this, and agreement, is subject to debate and argument and conviction and fisticuffs.
Yeah.
Extortion.
Right. When it's fun, yeah.
Yeah. But, ultimately, the exploration of any of these issues is accomplished with an experience. And you don't leave experience to investigate any of these issues, and you can't leave experience to investigate any of these issues. The issues themselves are found within experience. They don't depart from experience. And any answers or provisional answers or non-answers you find or don't find will be within experience. So, whether or not experience is a thing is, well, I don't know. That can be another range of the degree of thingness that experience can present as. But that doesn't depart from experience either.
No.
Whether or not there is something that actually corresponds to or is referable to a designation of experience is an interesting question. But to ask it and to find the answer, where are you going to look? It's the snake eating its tail. It's self-verifyingly itself because there's nothing else. And whether or not it is anything, it becomes a matter of philosophy more than anything else. And philosophy occurs within this. How many different ways can you hold this to be? Well, all bets are off on that one. The meter's running. But it never departs from itself. It's always this.
I agree with that, but I don't know why.
Well, yeah, but there is no why. It's self-verifying. This is the absolute, and as the absolute, you're forced to return to it because there's nowhere else to go. So it's self-verifying in the sense that there's no alternative. There's no competition. There's only one contender for reality, and this is it.
Did this start when I was born? Was it here before then? Will it last after the death of this body or so-called consciousness?
Before, after, born, death, consciousness, where did they happen? They happen in this. Does this happen in time? No. Time happens in this. Does this have a beginning? Can you find a beginning? Can you find an end? Are those even meaningful questions? It could be said to be an omnipresence, an atemporal omnipresence that can be spun as time. It can be spun as a present, a past, and a future. But when you look for the past, where are you going to look? When you look for the future, where are you going to look? When you look for the present, where are you going to look? And when you look for any of those things, do you find them? Can you find the present moment? Can you find the past? Can you find the future? Can you even find memory? Can you find the sun? Can you find the earth? All of these things are imputations within infinity. Literally. And that is what you will find.
Well, the functionality that permitted me to, mature from infancy, put on my own clothes, use the toilet, get a so-called higher education. Sometimes I literally mean higher. Do those belong to me?
They are you. There's not a you that's just discrete from them, that you could have ownership of them. You can stand apart from them and say, I'm over here and I own those that are over there. There is functionality. Where is it? Here. There is you. Where is it? Here. There's experience. Where is it? Here.
Well, what's the nature of this? I'll gleefully, admittedly refer to it as this narcissistic I that maybe feels insufficiency, wants to do spiritual seeking, enlightenment sounds like fun, craving experience, resisting, irritability or threat to self. What?
How is that different from memory of the sun or the contents of the pocket next to you? It's you're looking for an entity, and where are you going to look for that entity? You're going to look here. So you're going to find this, that is here. And so to the extent to which any of those seem to have come into existence as relevant modes of asking a question or thinking at all, let alone entities, is also this. It's going to be a mode of this. The answer to the question of what is that and how does it happen is like asking the question, what is memory and how does it happen? What is the past and how does it happen? What is the sun and how does it happen? Well, it's just modes in which this presents itself, or the apparent modes within which this presents itself. And when you go looking for them, you don't find discrete separate things sitting there on the shelf that you can pick up and look at and separate from other things, do you? What do you find? You find this. You never find anything other than this. And before you went looking for it, asking the question, what did you have? You had this. So the whole thing is just a circle, an imaginary circle. You're starting from here, you're departing, going in search of this great quest, and you're looking, and what do you find? This. And if you don't find, you go looking on your quest, and I don't find anything, I didn't find anything. So what do you end up with? This. So finding is this, not finding is this, asking the question is this, not asking the question is this, going in the great quest and the great, being a seeker and just being out there. I'm searching, I'm my lifelong dedication to finding the truth. Where did you start from? Right here. Where are you going to end up? Right here. You're going to find the answer. It's going to be this here. If you don't find the answer, it's going to be this here. It's like, think about that. There's a hidden message here. There's a subtle nuance that is can be found, and that subtle nuance is this here. How many modes does it have? How long you got?
What is time? Why is this? Why is this?
Why not? What and why? Wonderful notions. Time, wonderful notion. but these notions, is there a what? And where would you look, I mean, even more profoundly of what is time? Is there even a what? You know, setting aside for the moment the notion, is there a time? Is there a what? And where would you look to ask that question? You know, well, if there's a what, it has to be this. You know, if there's a why, where are you going to look? It has to be this. What's the why is this? Where are you going to look? Well, you have to look at this. So the only thing you're going to be able to find, the most you can possibly find is this. So the why of this is this. The what of this is this. And as far as time, where are you going to look? This. So if you find anything, what are you going to find? This. If you don't find it, where does that leave you? You know, I mean, all these questions, you're left with what you started with before you asked the question, before you even, you know, when you were a day old and you didn't know what time was and space was and why or what was, what did you have? Yes. You know, and now you ask the questions and they seem relevant. What's the context? This. Is there any additional context been added somewhere along the line? No. So the extent to which these things can seem to be relevant simply means that this is such that it can seem to be relevant in these modes. You know, how many modes can this seem to be relevant in? Well, again, you know, how much time you got.
As a card-carrying, miserable seeker for far more years than I would care to admit, what's the context or purpose? What's the fruition? Is there ignorance? Is there awakening? What does one do with the scintillating revelation we're bandying about?
What you do with it is you discover that you are it, you have always been it, everything is it, there has never been a not it, and it is not accessible in terms of how it appears, since it can manifestly appear in so many different modes, as we've just begun to scratch the surface of in this discussion.
Is that the resolution of ignorance, of apprehension, of fear, of craving?
Yes. This is it. This is the answer.
But how does, maybe I'm only understanding you geometrically rather than in some more profound manner, because I don't see the connection that the appreciation of the words and not words that we're sharing resolves this long-standing history, if not continuity, of apprehension and fear and craving and loathing and right? Future thinking about some idealized sense of awakening.
But all of that, the apprehension, the fear, the hopefulness, all of these things are predicated on elements that turn out to be this. And since they are predicated on this, and since no goal can hope to be found other than this, the whole thing collapses on itself as a meaningful structure.
Okay, so all right, that yes. So the working or operative metaphor would be a collapse of the presumption of insufficiency, the presumption of something that could be wounded or suffer or things not work out to its or my preference set.
Yeah, because, you know, one of the most fundamental, if not the most fundamental quality of this, manifestly, is its incoherence. And in the face of incoherence, it can scramble to try to find some coherence, and this can seem to be a big problem. Oh my God, there's incoherence. Oh my God, how do we fix this? How do we solve it? How do we find the answer? Incoherence is a question, right? So coherence must be the answer. So where's the coherence? There is none. Never was, never will be. And you can't use incoherence to construct solid, substantial, discrete elements out of to generate a problem, let alone a solution. You know, in incoherence, there's no problem, And so the discovery of incoherence turns out to be the solution, because it renders the initial question meaningless, and it also turns out to be, in actual fact, what you find at the end of the search. You find an infinite field of discrete sparkling light in an infinite void.
So
literally.
They're in this room. The whole notion then of remedying the angst of my experience as a seeker is then not coherence, not an answer, not an experience, not an epiphany. You're suggesting it's this.
Well, it's a misunderstanding of the problem. The initial problem was the incoherence, and you misunderstood it as a problem. In actual fact, it's the solution. And when you see that, then the entire digression was for naught. You run off in search of the Holy Grail, and you've been carrying it in your back pocket the whole time. You're all going off in search of the grand dissolution, and you've never been anything but. There has never been anything else discoverable than incoherence, than dissolution. All conditions in the present moment disappear. When? Now. Forever. Where's yesterday? It's gone. Where's a year ago? It's gone. Where's 10,000 years ago? It's gone. How much of a problem can it be if it's gone? Where's the future?
Yeah. Well,
it doesn't even need to be gone. It never happened. How much of a problem can it be?
Yeah, that can't be that threatening then. Thank you.
For what?
Because there's no answer to the questions that Jeff was asking, it doesn't mean that
there is an answer.
The answer is this.
Yeah.
I get that. But it doesn't invalidate the asking.
No, certainly. But the asking reveals that it's unnecessary to ask. Mind you don't get that revelation until you ask. The seeking reveals that it's unnecessary to seek, but it may be that you don't get that revelation without the seeking, so it's paradoxical, but nonetheless it happens to be the case.
And asking the question doesn't supply the answer.
No, it reveals that the question is irrelevant and unnecessary, because the answer, to the extent there is one, is just the constant condition, which is also the ground that generated the question. So it's all very paradoxical. Just think of a snake eating its tail, and all this stuff makes perfect sense.
Okay, no past, no future. Is there a now?
No. But I invite you to play with that for yourself and discover the truth. Because now is a fantasy about this. It's the fantasy is, oh, this is now. Okay, great. So exactly what is this now? Can you find it? Can you isolate it? Can you pin it down? What is now? When is now? Where is it? What's it made of? If you pursue these investigations carefully, you're going to be left hanging, because you're not going to find a now. You can't find it. It's self-evident that this is, but then you go look for the is, and you're not going to find that either. There's one fact, and you can't say what it is, and you can't say how it is. And we use words like here, now, being, the absolute, reality, all of these things authoritatively as if they were discrete and meaningful. But in actual fact, we can't find what any of them is, And yet they all exist and the questions are all asked in the context of this one fact. And you can't even find that you can't even verify that it is a fact, but it is self-verifyingly it. Just right here. It's always right here. It's always this. It's always now. It's always you, right? You know, nothing new there. Has it ever been different? The big guns.
This line of discussion making me think of this question that I've had for as long as I can remember, which is why is there something instead of nothing? It always has seemed really confounding, but picking that apart, I can see that the nothing that question contains is a fantasy. It's just an idea.
So is the something.
Right. That's what I was suspecting also. But
you go look for, is this something? And well, do you find anything when you go look at this? I mean, it is certainly whatever it is, but what is that? When you go looking, can you find it? Do you find any fundamental? Do you find consciousness? Do you find energy? Do you find presence? I mean, all these things are self-evidently here if you don't look too precisely. But when you go hunting for them, they're like mirages. You end up empty-handed.
Right.
And so this is, if there's a something, this is manifestly it, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of something here. And yet you try to find something. Try and really pin down what it is. It gets very, very trippy. It gets very strange. It's not nothing, but you can't find any something.
Right.
And then you go looking for, well, if it's not something, it must be nothing. But you go looking for nothing, you don't find that either. So what is this? Well, you can't say. You can't say. I mean, that's the point. This is absolute unresolvability. I mean absolute unresolvability. I don't mean that in a sloppy sense of, well, we've been looking and we haven't got to the bottom yet, but our greatest minds are still working on it and we have every confidence they're going to succeed. It's like, no. There is no bottom. This is not anything that can be resolved. This is intrinsically unresolvable. Pretty strange, pretty fucking weird. This is the extreme of bizarreness right here. This is the extreme of inconceivability. Normalcy is like, normalcy is the most absurd fantasy that ever existed. This is unutterably bizarre. If you see what this is and you then try and make sense of it, you're going to go bonkers. You're going to go nuts. They're going to lock you up because this is some weird shit. I mean fundamentally weird all the way down. And you can see this fact directly. You can experience this fact very intimately. And doing so turns out to be powerful. Doing so turns out to be very empowering, very liberating, because all of a sudden you find yourself unencumbered by all of this stupidity and limitation that crushes us as human beings in this context of this incredibly imbecilic culture we've been raised in. We are pure intelligence. We are profound, nonlinear, irrational genius. And we get access to this. We get to notice it and enjoy it and swim in it and revel in it when we let go of this arrogant stupidity of thinking we have a handle on anything. It turns out that bottomless unresolvability, bottomless, endless, irrational weirdness is the greatest gift. It's the greatest treasure. It's the greatest boon. And fortunately, it's all you've got. It's the only thing that is actually findable.
Okay, let me see. Where's the question? Is it better to identify with the unchanging self or the constantly changing phenomena? Both, neither, at the same time, and how?
Well, I don't identify with either one, but investigate any of them, look into them and try and see what they really are. It doesn't matter what you look at. Definitely look at the changing phenomena. Play with it, see if you can get to the bottom of what's going on there. If you can look towards that unchanging self, really go into it and see if you can find it, see if you can, pin it down, get your hands on it, find out what it really is. That's a really good investigation. It'll be interesting to see where you end up when you pursue it with intelligence and aggression. We have about 2 minutes in case anyone has a real zinger they want to get in. Close on a high note. All right. We have a taker.
Yeah, I just wanted to run something by you. Went to a non-dual conference a couple of weeks ago, and presenter, I forget who he was, posed the question, who is it that the Bodhisattva comes back for? And he said the Bodhisattva comes back for itself, to see itself through its eyes in a new way. And I just wondered how that seems to you.
Sounds good to me. Why not? I mean, that's all that's ever happening here is what this is, seeing itself in a new way. Every instant it sees itself in a new way forever. That's what your experience has always been. That's what all experience is. Whether you think of yourself as a bodhisattva or a Buddha or just some schmuck, I mean, that's all just spin doctoring. The bodhisattva's experience is no different than some schmuck's experience, no different than a Buddha's experience. It's just a question of degree of pretension and what you're calling yourself.
I like that answer.
And on that note, thank you all very much for coming, and I wish you a lovely evening. It's over. But is it ever really over? So good.